So on today's really short episode of the OB Collider pod, Brayden surprised everybody with a new Rolex.
Take a guess.
Right.
Drop some comments below what you think the price of this is. And whoever's closest, whoever's closest to the actual price will get something.
We'll get something. Let's just say I'm going to expose you right here. Brayden sent me a very grainy picture of him flexing this watch. Um, and I was like, okay, cool, like nice purchase. Not the worst idea, I guess, like not the worst strategy or thing to do with all of the cash the business is making. Um, but like hopefully it was done like with good tax strategy and in a smart way. So Braden asks me how much I think it is. I say 12K, maybe 20, and he responds with $60. Now I thought this meant $60,000. So I was like, wow, congrats. That's a solid purchase for like first watch. Um and
That's a
um
really solid purchase for a first watch.
yeah, I like went into today like preparing for our calls with like some notes on like Braden's tax strategy with the intention of connecting him with my tax advisor and like making sure that this was this was done properly through the business itself. Um but no, it turns out that it was a $60
It,
watch.
it was 60.
But we'll see. You should actually measure close rate to see if that has any impact.
I have two watches, right? So
Hmm.
my watch collection is two watches total, and I think it totals to a little over $100.
Okay.
So
Okay.
pretty
Growing.
baller.
Growing.
Now,
Definitely like holding value there.
yeah, maybe they go up over time. Um, like another $2. Obviously, these are fake. I would never say it's a real watch, but um, why not?
It makes me wonder how many gurus have fake watches now.
A lot,
You
for
think
sure,
so?
a lot. Yeah,
Really?
I heard Conor McGregor used to turn up to interviews with fake watches for like the longest time. So if you do what you want, right?
Fake Rolly gang. We should start doing that.
We
Fuck buying
should start doing
real
that.
Rolexes and spending money in that fashion. Let's keep buying property, building companies, increasing equity value, increasing stock portfolio sizes, but buy fake Rolexes the entire time.
Very true.
But like buy Rolexes and like watches that are like equivalent to what people get at each of those stages. Like I'll go get an AP, but it's a fake one.
But it's a fake one. Well,
But
I
it's
mean, there is a site. There is a site to get Rolexes, and I think they're like 150 pounds. It didn't have any of the currency, only 150 pounds. Um,
they sound real. They sound legit for sure. Sick.
but if I walk around and I just say like, "This is 60," like if I say it nice and nonchalantly, it's just 60. You might
It's
think it's 60,000.
you thought it was $60,000. You said 60 bucks to me. That means 60,000.
Yeah.
But fair
Well, I
enough.
will say, I remember you told me once, you were like, I don't know what you said, something like, and I could be misquoting, but you said something along the lines of like, I don't look at a purchase under $1,000, or something like that.
I think I meant unit sizes. I stole this from Hormozy. But kind of. I like stole this from a few different people and combined it into one. But just the idea of unit sizes, like there was definitely a time when um the unit size that I would look at is 1,000. Look, was a thousands. So like I figured that if I wanted to make more money, if I go, okay, cool, the company makes $250. It sounds much easier to go from $250 to $400. So I'm just going to start thinking about thousands as $1. And then I'm going to go, cool, how do we go from 250 bucks to $400? And then I
Pretty
looked at
easy.
spending everything as $1 too. So
That can be a little
I was like,
dangerous.
I was like, okay, so like this thing is $1,500, so it's a dollar 50. Um, which is probably not the best mentality in the world to have, but I tried it for a little bit as a heuristic. The only problem I found is then I started uh it didn't help me like really uh look at the value of something. So if a flight was $400, I'd be like, well, that's not even a unit. That's not even a dollar. So I guess like everything's a dollar. Okay, so everything's super cheap. So then I stopped like properly quantifying the value of things where it's like maybe for protein powder you're not going to spend more than $20 on it and like 150 is kind of ridiculous, but to me it was all the same because it was less than a unit size. Um so
Interesting.
that mentality and approach, at least in the way that I used it, was slightly flawed. But definitely, it's definitely like the uh, I think helpful to use and think in larger numbers because it helps you kind of quantify things slightly differently. Like uh, if you're thinking about, let's say, increasing revenue or like ways to create enough value in a way that you're able to like generate $1,000 a month, like it's definitely a good exercise to think, okay, well, how could I make 100,000 a month or $1 million a month off of this? Because uh, I'm not going to say that there's like less work in order to do that, but sometimes the steps that you take are different. So if you're thinking about how to get a business to 100,000 a month instead of how to get a business to $10,000 a month, you might actually take very different steps, which would mean that the 100,000 a month might take a little longer, but it's now 10 times bigger. So it sounds kind of silly, but thinking in larger unit sizes, I think, is helpful. And just thinking on a like much grander scale, um, is a good way and a good heuristic to make more money.
Agreed.
Agreed. Cool.
Agreed.
And
Um,
that kind of relates to offers themselves.
yes, which is the topic of today.
Yeah. So we wanted to just like talk really quickly about what makes good offers in the first place, especially with like agencies and service businesses. I think over the last few years, there are things that I've learned that make good offers and bad offers, and there's lots of good information online about offers themselves. But I think there's some things that people actually miss in their explanations of them. And for me, one of them is actually selling systems instead of selling services. I think you know what that means.
Yeah. Um, with an offer, you want to have it have a desired outcome and that you're able to get them to and that you're pitching so that way they can kind of quantify what's actually going to come with the purchase. Biggest thing with offers overall, I'd say, is obviously figuring out the price and then in some sort of way having some risk reversals in there. So figuring out specifically, what am I charging and then what's the risk to this person? How can I reverse it as much as possible? Um, Obviously, everyone's gonna have to take some risk when jumping into something, but that's a really good framework overall. But you can overdo it. When I was doing like pay per lead and stuff like that, that offer was super risk reverse for the person signing up, but that resulted in so much more churn and just a whole mess. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
think there's a point of diminishing return.
So if you're like, I'm going to clarify a couple of things that you said. So the first is pay per lead. Um, for people that don't know, excuse me, in Braden's niche, like getting listings for real estate agents. There was a point in his business where he was offering pay per lead. So he was charging people based on every lead that he brought, um, which is very attractive to people coming into the business, to people getting to know Braden and his services themselves. But from a business model standpoint, it didn't unlock much scale or much ability to reinvest in improving the service itself, because Braden essentially had to like front all of the marketing expenses and marketing costs in order to get that person a lead and continued leads after that. And that definitely works. Like it's something that you can do. It's an approach that you can take as a business model itself. But if you're looking to grow faster, if you're looking to reinvest in the business faster, then figuring out how many leads someone's going to get in that 90-day period and then charging that on a monthly basis or an upfront basis is actually much better for the business itself. So there's a bit of push and pull where it's like it might be harder to close, um, but it needs to make sense for your business. Now, what I kind of wanted to highlight was this idea of systems versus services. Now, one thing I've noticed is when you sell somebody like tasks, let's say, from my agency, like making let's say like making ad creatives. Making ads for businesses is something that could be really high value. You can sell you can make an ad that makes a business hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. um, and if you're going to make something for somebody that makes them millions of dollars, then that positioning is much easier for a business owner to come in and say, okay, cool, well, I'll actually pay, a few $1,000s for these ads, or for this ad. But let's say if I, instead of selling an ad creative that makes millions of dollars, I said, I'm going to sell you video editing and I'm going to sell you hourly video editing, then I'm selling a task to somebody. So now my positioning is way less, and
Same
maybe
service
same
overall, right?
service, maybe a couple of extra things involved in the ad creative thing. But like, let's say I sold video editing and like sourcing of the ad assets themselves. Um, yeah, I'm definitely positioning myself as something that's gonna be a $20 to $50 a month service. Um, because I'm also requiring the client to do the hard work of the creativity, but behind what will actually make that ad a revenue generating asset.
So if you just like engulf a little bit more of your clients' pain points, etc., and solve those problems, and obviously like the charge, the amount you can actually charge will be much greater because, and also 100% positioning. You know, you can sell the same service in two different ways. And
Hmm.
depending on what you're focusing on generating, it doesn't really come down to the deliverables. I think that's one of the biggest things I've learned um, from seeing you create offers and tweak other people's offers is it really doesn't matter the amount of time you work or the deliverables in it. Pretty much it's just the result, right?
Hmm.
Like that's what most people are paying for. So if it takes me 5 hours a week to get that result or 50 hours a week, doesn't really matter overall as long as I'm able to get the best result possible. You know what I mean? Um,
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's a lot more outcome focused. Like
mhm.
ultimately, if you look at any task, like let's just say cleaning. Like I'm at my friend's startup's office right now. It's it's pretty messy in here. They've got a whole lot of boxes everywhere. They got a little rack for their servers, which is pretty cool. But overall, this place is relatively messy. Now, um, I've seen offers where people have like housekeeping baked into a service, and I've helped build an offer like this. And for the last like few years of my life, everywhere that I've lived as like a primary residence has had a cleaner. And I started off with like a day a week, and then 2 days a week, and then eventually full time. And now that person cooks and cleans and like automates a lot of my life. Now, I built that system myself, and I hired that person myself, so it doesn't cost a lot necessarily. But I've helped people build offers where that is their service or that's part of their service. And the way that it gets positioned successfully is from the point of view of a time saving thing. So, hey, I'm coming in and saving you 20 hours a week. And if your time is worth $500 an hour, I'm saving you $10,000, $20,000 a month worth of cost, that's going to allow you to go and make a whole lot more money in your business. I'm also saving you mental clarity and mental space. Like for me, I notice that I do work a lot better when things are organized well. So when my space is clean and simple, and I can kind of just sit down and focus, and everything's set up accordingly, and I don't need to think about when I'm next going to eat. I know for a fact that that actually helps me mentally too, which then goes and leads to creating better value, or better offers and better services and better products, which all lead to more money being made as a result.
And
So
then
that
you can focus more on the business, right? And then they can focus more on specifically, I don't know what's going on. Your mic might be cutting out, but You can focus more specifically on what you're good at, and then they can focus more on that. So, getting you, I don't know, healthier food, whatever, whatever. So that way, that's not something you have to worry about. And then another thing on top of that, which is a follow-up question I want to ask, which is a complete left turn. But at what point do you think it's smart to get a service like that? What point did you get it?
So it depends where you are where you're at in business. I think when I was at like 10 to 20,000 a month in revenue, I first got a cleaner and I was spending like 200 a month in total on cleaning, and that was like once every 2 weeks, once a week type of thing. And then I slowly ramped it up in there from there. So I like you could probably start a bit sooner. Might not be the highest leverage thing to focus on initially. Um, I also think that there's a part of it where you can get a system pretty good yourself and then you can delegate it. Like if you don't have a very well optimized system and then someone follows a messy step or set of steps, it can take a lot longer. I had things organized in my house in such a way that it made it very easy to keep clean and very easy to organize. Everything had a place. The food I ate was simple. It was cost effective. It was healthy. And it was easy to prepare and like follow. Like if you're getting someone to make complex dishes for you for 7 hours, that was definitely an issue I ran into when I was like when I started getting someone to cook for me. I've had different people cook for me over time, and like some people would take like 5 hours a meal, which seemed kind of ridiculous, or like 5, 6 hours to do meal prep for a couple of days, and then there's others that can do it all in 60 minutes. So they just had like very optimized systems with the way that they prepped meals or like prepared meals for the week, what groceries they bought, the ingredients being the same for several meals, that kind of like approach and framework. So that's kind of important. But generally, I think that you can kind of start at any stage and just start slowly ramping it up from there. Or if you're going to use someone else's offer that sells something like that, you're probably going to be spending like 3,000 US a month plus. And in that case, it probably makes sense to install when you're doing above 20 to 30,000 US a month in profit. Maybe a bit before that, but I'd kind of
Interesting.
range, yeah.
Interesting. So the high level overview, to recap everything once again, is when creating an offer, obviously you want to have a specific service that you're delivering, but you don't obviously want to position it as a service. You want to position it as a more of a system, have
Mhm.
a good risk reversal in it. Um, and then, I mean, just to touch on it real quick, what do you feel is a good price to charge based off value? A lot of people struggle with what should I charge for this? Would you say it's 10% of what you can make them, 5%, etc.?
I don't know if there is a sweet spot or a perfect spot. I think we spoke about this on last week's call. Um, but I think if you're selling any sort of marketing based service, you want to chart like you want people to make at least kind of 2 to 3 times as a bare minimum what they're paying. Ideally, if you can work up towards 5 to 10 times, then it's going to be very easy to sell. Um, so that would be kind of my recommendation.
But I'd
Um,
assume it's
yeah,
probably a lot of industry specifics as well, right?
for sure.
There's a lot of different things and variables that go into it. But
For sure. Some things are harder to quantify too, like selling phone plans, for example. Like companies kind of sell you a phone plan and they have, especially in Canada, they have really, really high margins because they have like it's an oligopoly, so they have like legal regulations in place that make it much harder for any new players to enter the market itself. Um, and they can charge you a very high margin. But the other kind of variable is it's hard to quantify the actual value from a phone plan, but you could say it's very high. Like I know for myself doing business, if I didn't have a phone number, I definitely wouldn't be able to generate as much revenue.
yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
So definitely a good ongoing topic to talk about, but we'll wrap it up at there for this week.
Next podcast will be longer. We'll make sure to block out good time for it. If you want to learn how to get a fake Rolex, click the link in the description.
See ya.
Later.